What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we're doing a deep dive on an onomatopoeia. Trucker 219, what are you talking about? An onomatopoeia is a word that imitates or suggests the sound that it describes. And today we're diving into KLLM, or as I like to call it, klum. Wait. I got an idea. Get your Trucker 219 merch down below. And in this video, we're calling a driver recruiter, taking a look at some online reviews, and we're also going to look at a video right here on YouTube of a driver's experience working for KLLM. And at the end of the video, I'll answer the question, okay or no way. Would I, Trucker 219, go to work for KLLM? Klum! We're diving in right now. Let's go.
KLLM Recruiting, this is Jack.
Hi, Jack. I was calling to see about possibly going to your CDL training program. I was curious to get some more information about what that looks like.
Sure, and what state do you live in?
Tennessee.
Okay, I know we can bring in Class 8 permit holders from Tennessee to get into our Mississippi program. Do you have your Class 8 CDL permit?
No, I am training to go do that right now. I should be ready probably next week sometime to go and get that.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, I can connect you with our school. It may take just a second.
Okay.
KLLM Recruiting, how can I help?
I was calling to see what it would be like to go through your guys' CDL training program.
All right, what state are you out of?
Tennessee.
All right, so for Tennessee residents, we can bring you to Mississippi for training. You would have to get your Class A permit and a DOT physical before we could get you started.
Okay.
But once you have those, it would be an 18-day course. KLLM would provide you with a bus ticket to get to Mississippi if you didn't want to drive your personal vehicle. And then they will put you in a hotel room with a roommate for that 18 days. Breakfast and lunch are provided each day, except for Sundays. Classes are Thursday through Saturday that first week, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then the remainder of the 18 days will be Monday through Saturday. So you'll have breakfast and lunch provided each day that you have class. And then after you complete the 18 days, they will send you back to Tennessee for you to get your Class A license. And then once you have that Class A license, they will dispatch you to go over the road with a trainer for 6 weeks. And that is where your pay with us would kick in at, and it would be $812 per week while you're out with that trainer. Once you complete that 6 weeks out with a trainer, then they will upgrade you into your own truck and start you out at 55 cents per mile, and miles average between 2,200 and 2,800 per week. Once you're on your own truck, home time is for every 7 days you're out on the road, you earn 2 days home. And you can choose to stack those if you wanted to be out 14 days, home 4, out 21 days, home 6. You could do that as well. But everything within the program will be paid for by KLLM, just pending that you sign a 12-month contract to drive for us after the completion. So there's no payroll deductions or anything like that. They help pay for the schooling. The only upfront cost to you would be you getting that permit, which most states it's about $28, and then your DOT physical, and that's just going to depend on what doctor you go to as far as the pricing on that.
Okay, so going through the CDL training, there is no pay while I'm getting my CDL?
No, there's no pay during that 18 days.
Okay, and then the contract would just be for just the education then?
Correct, yeah. The training that we're giving at the school and that 6 weeks over the road with a trainer is what that 12 months is going to pay for.
Okay, and then you did say 55 cents per mile?
That's correct.
Okay, and then if I choose to go somewhere else for training to get my CDL, do you guys offer tuition reimbursement at all?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, and then last 2 questions here. Do you guys have cameras in your trucks?
Forward facing towards the road, not towards the driver.
Okay, and then what are your guys' trucks governed at?
They are, hold on, I'm not going to ask that question a lot. 62 on the pedal, 65 on cruise.
Okay. And then is there any other things that are paid for as far as layover, detention?
Yes, they are. I have to get you over to one of the experienced driver recruiters. I don't really deal with that as a student recruiter.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, I am looking at my different options to figure out how to get this done here, so I will let you guys know if I decide to go with you.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Have a good day.
All right, thank you. You too. Bye-bye. All right, so I just got off the phone with KLLM's recruiting department, and this company does offer CDL training. However, it's not a paid CDL training, meaning that for the 18 days that you'd be training to get your CDL, you would have to go without pay. Now, this is about equivalent to what it would be like to go through a CDL school. CDL schools also don't pay you while you're going through their school. They did say they would get you a bus ticket and a hotel over to their CDL school, whether it be in Mississippi or Texas, so long as you have your permit and your DOT physical ready to go. Because they're training you to get your CDL, they do require you to serve a 12-month contract with them after completion. Once you complete the CDL program and go back home and do your CDL test through your state, you'll come back and go out with a driver trainer for 6 weeks. The pay during that 6 weeks is $812 per week, and then after that 6 weeks, you'll go solo. Once you go solo, you'll be making 55 cents per mile. On average, you'd be making 2,200 to 2,800 miles per week. Their home time policy is 7 days out for 2 days home, and you could stack that up as long as you want to be able to take more home time. Now, if you choose not to go through KLLM to get your CDL, they do not offer tuition reimbursement. So if you've acquired some debt from going through CDL school and you're looking at KLLM, just know that they don't have any sort of reimbursement program in order to pay you back. They do have cameras in their truck, but it's only road facing instead of driver facing and road facing. And their trucks are governed at 62 miles an hour on the pedal and 65 miles an hour on cruise control. So we're going to pull up the calculator and see how these numbers stack up. All right, so they said at the low end you'd be at 2,200 miles per week multiplied by 55 cents per mile, and you're looking at $1,210 before taxes. Now that's on the low end of 2,200 miles per week, and for a new driver that's actually reasonable. You should be expecting between 2,000 and 2,200 roughly. Now it's definitely not a stretch for an over-the-road truck driver to get 2,500 miles. I've just found with some of these big companies, it's kind of hard to get that based off of their dispatching. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt here and go ahead and do the math on that anyway. And at 2,500 miles a week, you're looking at $1,375 for your pay pre-tax. Let's go ahead and take taxes out of that. My rule of thumb is 20%. Could be more, could be less. That's $275. Subtract that from $1,375 and you're at $1,100 for the week. Yep, just wanted to be sure. So you'd be at $1,100 a week after taxes at the high end of 2,500 miles per week. Now I will say comparatively to some of the more recent companies I've done a deep dive on, this pay is really decent. And actually overall, it's amongst the highest paying that I've seen thus far. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and take a look at some online reviews to see what other drivers have had to say about KLLM. And just at an overall glance here, we're at 3.5 stars out of 584 reviews. Most of them are in the 5 through 3 range, and a few of them are 2s and 1s. All right, so this first one is a 5-star review that says good place, and this is from a truck driver out of Cartersville, Georgia. It says they took good care of their drivers here, decent pay and plenty of miles. We only left because over the road no longer fit our family's needs. We had a wonderful DM. Pros were good pay and cons were work-life balance. And again, with these work-life balance things, you're getting into trucking. It's just one of those things that it's a very demanding job, and you should understand that if you're going to be an over-the-road truck driver, you're not going to be home very often. And in the case of KLLM, as the recruiter said, it's 7 days out for 2 days home. And it also sounds like this one was a team operation, so just based off of this review, I'm guessing that they offer some team services. All right, so this one says the overall experience was okay, nothing too drastic. What's the best part of working for the company? Had a great dispatcher that kept me rolling on good and bad loads, and log audit staff was very helpful and helped me with my mistakes. What's the most stressful part of working at the company? The pay settlement wasn't great a couple of times, but no stress, mostly easygoing for me. What is the work environment and culture like at this company? It was mostly good. I knew several people on first name basis. Finally, what's a typical day look like? Just running my load assignments and keeping contact with my dispatcher. Okay, so based off of this review that was in October of this year, it seems like they had a couple of issues with getting paid on time, or there was an issue with their settlement where they weren't getting paid for certain logs, but they did say it only happened a couple of times. But for me, in my opinion, 1 or 2 mistakes is okay, but if it's happening repetitively where you have to chase after your money, that's a sign that it might be a good time to start looking elsewhere for a company. And a little Trucker 219 advice, anytime you start with any company, whether you've been driving for a long time or you're just getting started started in the industry, it's always a good idea to keep a written log of your miles. And at least for the first couple of months, you should compare the miles that you've written down and logged, compare it to what you have made on your paycheck. You could do this the entire time that you work for them, or just until you feel like there's a level of trust built there to where you know that they're not going to be messing up on your paycheck. The people that work in payroll can make mistakes too. And I'm not saying just because there's mistakes that it's a shady company to work for, but if mistakes happen on a regular basis, there's a chance that they could be trying to rob you of the pay that you earned. So always keep an eye on that, at least until you feel comfortable enough and have a level of trust built with a company. Okay, so this is a 4-star review. It says, productive place, over-the-road truck driver out of Jackson, Mississippi. Starting out can be kind of slow just because the dispatcher that you are assigned want to get a feel for how you like to run and trip plan. But once that is established, they keep you running as long as you got hours and as long as you want. Yeah, that's another great point, and I think this is just a general rule across all companies. For the first month or so that you're working with them, you're learning your dispatcher and the dispatcher is learning you. You'll find that you'll either like to work days or you'll like to work nights. Some people prefer to do drop-in hooks, others like live loads. Some drivers enjoy long distance routes and others prefer to bounce around to city. And you also got to factor in how often you want to take home time. So the dispatcher is learning the driver and you're learning the dispatcher and you're building somewhat of a rapport. So this guy definitely made a good point that the first little bit, it's going to be a period of getting to know each other. All right, so this is a 1-star review, also from October, from a truck driver out of Richland, Mississippi. It says avoid with 3 exclamation points. And it says this company only cares about the numbers. They will stick you with the worst trainers who will not prepare you to be successful at your job, then stick you with a student loan once you fail. Avoid the company because you truly deserve better. They said the pros was a fast-paced process and the cons, no qualified trainers. And here's a 3-star. It says good program, just terrible trainers. Over-the-road truck driver out of Jackson, Mississippi. Company has a good starter program for entry-level drivers, but the training program is terrible. The trainers are selfish and rude. Some of them are all about the money. All right, so just in the first handful of reviews here, we're already getting 2 complaints now about the training. And like I've said before, a complaint here and there about different things is fine. It's just probably upset drivers. However, if you're seeing the same thing over and over again, this is something that you need to pay extra attention to. Okay, so here's a 5-star. Great company from an over-the-road truck driver. I started with KLLM. I attended their academy to obtain my CDL. I've been working with them for 2 years now and haven't had any issues. They've been great to me and pay more than most companies for a beginner driver. Yeah, like I said, 55 cents per mile is kind of on the upper end of pay. And that's one thing that I'm really looking for here in this review is to see if you're getting the miles, because you can make $1 a mile, but if you're only getting 500 miles a week, it really doesn't make much of a difference. So this one's a 3-star. It says good starter company. Company has some of the best starting pay and will put you through schooling. You are definitely just another body in the seat and will fire you with little cause. All right, so that's not a terrible review. The 3-star probably doesn't match up there. Good pay, they could put you through schooling, and you're just another number. But at the end of the day, you're working for a major carrier, and this is just how it works. These folks don't have time to sit there and learn your name. You're known by your truck number, and that's it. And especially for a company this large, it's going to take some time for them to get to know your name if they ever do. All right, so this one says easy and calm. Got my CDL here at the Jackson terminal. School is pretty good, fast paced due to the amount of people coming in. But as long as you are confident and know what you are doing, it isn't that hard to get the hang of things. Would highly recommend a dedicated account as things seem to work better on that side. But I've heard decent stories on the over-the-road division. This 5-star here, it says top notch, also out of Jackson, Mississippi. This 1-star here, also out of Jackson, Mississippi, says stay away. Absolute terrible company. It's as if I didn't drive for them. Most of the time they thought I was a student and didn't acknowledge me half the time. Terrible experience. Again, this one kind of falls into you're just another number. All right, so this one's a 2-star review. It says if you don't like your home. It says in this place you can expect to stay 3 weeks out and 2 days home. All right, so this 1-star says don't waste your time. A company driver. Awful and unorganized. Run, do not walk. There's better companies out there that's paying the same thing as them. They're rude and inconsiderate. If they had better workers, it would be all right. Okay, so this one's complaining probably about dispatch or the trainers. Okay, this 1-star review says one of the most horrible work of my life. A few good apples and the rest are bad. What's the best part of working for the company? Portions of the staff and my classmates. Most stressful part about the company? Racist dispatchers, retaliation, all the drivers who speak out against the discrimination, disrespectful supervisors, and operation managers. managers. What is the work environment and culture like at the company? Very stressful, and low mileage, incompetent dispatchers make it stressful on the drivers. And a typical day, low mileage when you speak out against the discrimination, poor planning, and you have to fight for your paycheck every week. That's a pretty rough review there, and it basically boils down to not getting enough miles and not getting paid, and having dispatchers that were rude and disrespectful. It's reviews like that that make me say that there's no perfect company for everyone. Each person has their own priorities when they're looking for a company. We've looked at May Trucking and Halver Lines, where the pay is significantly less, but the respect that the dispatchers and the office personnel have for the drivers is significantly better based off of the reviews. It's kind of one of those things where you have to figure out what's most important to you. Do you want higher pay and have to deal with a little bit of disrespect, or do you want to take a little bit lower pay and feel respected? Now, I know the perfect situation is you get great pay and you get respect, and in a perfect world I agree with you, but unfortunately sometimes that's just not how things work. And that's why I do these deep dives, so you guys can have the most amount of information to make the right choice for your situation. But we're going to look right here on YouTube and see if there's any other drivers sharing their experience about working for KLLM. And this first video is from the YouTube channel Matty Ice Visions, and if you want to check out the full video, I'll leave a link for that down below.
KLLM. It's basically one of those student companies. It's like, you know, so you got Swift, you got KLLM, you got, I think Stevens Transport. You got all of those type of companies where they always tell you this up front. They'll be like, all right, they always give you that gimmick of, we'll pay for your school. We'll help you get your CDL. We'll give you a job after you get your CDL. You guarantee the job, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so, you know, that's great. You know, for me, you know, when I decided to, you know, leave college and I wanted to do something different, I was like, all right, you know, I asked my friend, he told me about KLLM. I said, it sounds good. They pay for everything. They give you, you know, some cash during school. They give you some cash while you're out on the road. You know, it's free food while you're at the school. Like, who can't turn that down? It sounds great. You know what I'm saying? Then you guarantee the job out there sounds good. Because at the time, you know, they tell you, no, they give you all these numbers. You talk to a recruiter, they're like, oh yeah, our drivers make, you know, 1,000 plus a week, you know. Then there'll be some guys like, yeah, I make 15, 16, didn't make that, but make 15, 1600 a week. I'm like, oh, that sounds great. Who gonna turn that down? You know, and you think truck driver, you think money. And when you think money, you think, all right, I'm about to, you know, be popping out and stuff. So, you know, so I hop in, you know, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do it. Call KLLM, you know, we get started, we go through the academy, you know, the academy was easy. I mean, truth be told, it's not that hard as far as like the classes are concerned, to get the permit, because it's just a lot of like if you can get a driver's license, you almost can get, you know, the permit. It's just a little bit, you know, some stuff is really specific, like the air brake test and all of that, and knowing, you know, how much weight, how to do the tandems. That's a little bit, you know, you got to know a little bit know a thing here or there, but.
Yeah, just for a heads up, if you're studying to get your permit or go to get your CDL, I just advise drivers to pay attention to the number stuff, your PSI, your stopping distance, your tandem weights, all those things that involve numbers, because everything else is just kind of common sense. But the stuff that trips people up generally when they're studying to get their permit is the number stuff.
Aside from that, it's not the hardest thing in the world. Because some people, as you can see, it's a lot of people that's not the brightest that got their CDLs, truth being told. Now, as far as the driving test, then yeah, that's something where, you know, you need you're the driver, you're not like, yeah, anybody can drive a truck in a straight line, but if you can back it in, all that, yada, yada, yada. But anyway, so you went through the academy, you know, we got some cash for passing. Then we went through the paid orientation. Then we spent like the 5 weeks with the trainer, 5-6 weeks with the trainer, which in my opinion, that's another thing that just made KLLM go downhill. 6 weeks on the road with a trainer. Let me rephrase that. 6 weeks on the road with somebody I've never met in my entire life. My trainer, he was okay. You know, we got into it one time I was screaming my lungs at him, trying not to smack the shit out of him. He was driving me crazy. But outside that, we still cool. He called me every now and again. But anyway, that 6 weeks with somebody you've never met in your entire life, and if you don't pass that 6 weeks, you don't get hired, that's stupid. Because not everybody's a people person. And you gotta think about it. You're driving 6 weeks on the road with somebody you've never met in your entire life. People have different habits of like sleep habits or shower habits, or they want to do this, they want to do that. Some people don't, you know, you tell me some random guy's going to dictate how I am for the next 6 weeks. Like, you know what I'm saying? That's just his own thing. Like, to me, it should just be 2 weeks. You know what I'm saying? Like, after the second week with my trainer, it got to the point where like, I'm not learning anything at this point, because they keep in mind, they think they make a lot of money for that training. We was only paid $500 a week. That trainer is making money for every mile I make for him. Every single penny, every mile, everything. He's making stupid money.
Yeah, this video was made about 4 years ago, so some things have changed since then. The training pay is a little bit different, but nevertheless, a lot of companies will advertise that you can pick who your trainer is and you can choose who to go out with. Make sure you guys click before you get out on the road, which in theory is a great idea. You get to chop it up with some guys that are hanging out in the driver's lounge or whatever, and you can pick and choose who you connect with the most and decide that that's going to be your trainer. However, according to what the recruiter said, while you're getting your CDL, you're not getting paid for it, and that's 18 days without pay. So you're antsy to get on the road and get started and start making some money. So are you going to sit there for 3 days waiting for the perfect trainer to come through the door? Probably not. You're going to go with the first one that's available. And not only that, some companies have a limited amount of trainers, so you're going to have to wait for a trainer anyway. And he's being completely honest here. Getting into the truck, especially for 6 weeks with somebody that you don't know, you've never really met before, that's a long time to be with somebody. It's not like going to work for 8 hours and then you get to go home and unwind. You're literally living with this person for the next 6 weeks. And based on the sounds of it, this training is not being operated as a training program. And what do I mean by that? I mean, the trainer's not sitting right next to you in the passenger seat giving you advice as you're driving down the road. It sounds to me like they're operating more like a team operation, meaning one person drives and the other person sleeps, and then you swap out. And in my opinion, that's not quality training. And I do think they could slim this down to 2 weeks if they operated it like a training program. But when you want to operate it like a team operation, there's only so much information that could be shared when one person is driving and the other person is sleeping. And not only that, but teaming is a challenging job. Imagine trying to sleep while somebody else is driving down the road. And it's completely different than sitting in a car seat. You're laying down on the bed. So every big bump that you hit, you go flying up in the air. It's a very challenging way to start your career, being thrust into a situation where you're having a lack of sleep, you're not getting the adequate attention from your trainer, and you're having to operate the truck as a team operation. So I definitely get where this gentleman's coming from.
Off him. Now I know some students are lazy and don't want to, drive or they're not used to it. But me, running 500-600 miles a day, that man was making bank off of me without a doubt in my mind. That man was making so much money. That's why, and I was wondering back then, like, why you always trying to offer to buy me stuff out? He was just happy because I was making him some bread. Had to be, because when you got a trainer and you're in training, you got a student, they make more money off of that. So anyway, so I passed that. You know what I'm saying? It was good or whatever.
And to be honest, rightfully so. If you're training somebody and you're teaching them and you have your experience and you're sharing it with another driver, you should be adequately reimbursed for those efforts.
Then I started with the actual company with my own truck. Started out, was 5 weeks on the road by myself, just trying to stack up, because at this time I was getting ready to move to Texas, and I was trying to move to Texas ASAP. So I was like, all right, I'm pushing on the road, stack up some bread, so when I move, I ain't gonna lose no money. I'm just gonna make it boom. So 6 weeks, it wasn't bad. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's OTR trucking, and not everything's their fault. I had some slow shippers here and there, but overall, I was making good money. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, 5 weeks, I, was averaging about, around 1,000 a week, like they claimed. And I was like, all right, this ain't, this is the first real job I had, so this is the biggest check I ever had in my life. So I'm like, you know what? This is great. I'm digging it. 1,000 a week. I ain't never seen no numbers like this with my name on the check. Like, I know the highest one was like 1,400, and at this point, my old team driver, that's when he graduated, so we started teaming together. So I'm like, all right, cool. So we moved to Texas. He was we got an apartment, split the rent, keep that cost of living down. So I'm like, all right. And then I bought, the Challenger, because I got my first, little big stack of money. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get something nice. So this is where I start seeing the downsides of KLLM. When we started team driving, how I told you at the beginning of the video that they claim that you get 1,000 a week. This is when I started to realize you only making money like that when you're driving. When you home, you're not getting paid while you home at all. Like,
duh. Yeah, if you're not working, you're not going to make money. You're on a cents per mile basis. If the truck doesn't move, you're not making any money.
You don't get vacation pay. So I'm like, that's the first thing I'm going to say. To make money with OTR trucking, you have to stay on the road. And that's just OTR trucking in general. If you want to keep that consistent flowing, you have to stay on the road. So that was like, I was like, all right, I have to.
And this is why I recommend to people to stay out for a month or two at a time and then take a couple of days off. If you're trying to go home every 2 weeks, by the time you get done with the home time, you're behind on your bills for the following week. It just doesn't really work out. So you have to stay out there for a decent period of time. And trust me, I definitely tried to do the home every 2 weeks thing, but in 2 weeks, I wasn't able to build up enough cash flow in order to cover that time off. So I found that sweet spot to be about a month out on the road at one time and then take a 3-day weekend off.
When I was solo, I was 45 cents a mile, and when I was team, I was 55 cents a mile. On average, I was bringing in around 1,100 a week in checks. But
Okay, so their pay has gone up from 45 cents per mile in the last 4 years up to 55 cents per mile. So as far as the money situation, when he's talking about that, it's based off of a different cents per mile.
Only the weeks I was driving. The weeks, so when I was team driving, this is how we was doing. We'll be out around 2-3 weeks on the road, spend about 4-5 days at home. 2-3.
Yeah, you're never going to make any money doing that. That's just not... It stinks so bad, and I get it, you want to be home more often, but that is just not the way over the road works. If you're trying to be out for 2 weeks and take 4 or 5 days home, you're crazy. It's just never going to work like that. And you're going to be disgruntled, you're going to be upset that you don't have a good work-life balance and that you're not making any money. And this is why on these reviews, I see some of these issues come up, and I don't think people understand what over the road is. If you don't work, you don't make money. If that truck's not moving, you're not making any money. So understand, as you're going to be an over-the-road truck driver, you're gonna have to stay out for a while, and work-life balance really isn't in the cards for the first year or so.
On the road for 5 days at home. That's what we was do on the cycle. And after a while, I started to realize, like, the monthly, like I just said, 2-3 weeks on the road, and then probably about a week at home. So if I'm only making $1,100, you know, per driven set, I really was only making about $3,000 a month. And if you think about it, that's not truck driver money. Because at this point, I had rent, car note, insurance, which my insurance is crazy high, but all that stuff, so you're not having to pay for stuff, so you have to stay on the road. So I didn't like the fact that, like, because I wanted to be home. You know what I'm saying? I'm in a new state. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to enjoy it, but I got to stay on the road to keep that money coming in. I didn't like that.
Yeah, I get it. I definitely understand that. And there is a spot for that in trucking. And what this gentleman really needs is a local company. But in order to get there, you have to get some experience, because these local companies that are delivering to stores all the time, delivering to houses, they don't want somebody that doesn't have enough experience to make a turn. And this is where we see videos of trucks taking out light poles and stop signs and all this stuff. This comes from inexperienced drivers. This is why these local companies look for drivers that have some experience. And generally, you're looking at 1 to 2 years before they'll even look at you. The 3 year is the gold standard for a local truck driving job, but there are definitely some that'll get you in at about 1 year to 2 years of experience. So if local is something that suits your needs a little bit better, just think of it as an investment. You're going to have to invest 1 to 2 years into your education, aka training, aka experience, before you're able to move up into more desirable positions. And even if you get local, you're not necessarily going to have a better work-life balance, because if you're within a 100-mile radius, you can work up to 14 hours a day, and then add a half hour to an hour drive to get back and forth to work, you're looking at a 16-hour day, and that leaves just 8 hours to get home, have some dinner, go to sleep, and do it again the next day. Now, are all local companies going to work you that hard? No, but there definitely are some that do. And as a general rule of thumb, if you're going to be local, you're looking at 10 to 12-hour days. But the upside to most of the local things is that you are able to be home on the weekend. And while you're not home for very long, you do get to see your bed every day.
Okay, but that's not really a KLM thing. I'm gonna give y'all that. It's not a KLM thing. This is these student companies don't pay that much. Which is why I switched to the company I'm at now. They pay a lot more and they're dedicated. So I'm only spending 5-6 days out on the road at a time, and I'm guaranteed 2 or 3 off. But they pay so much, and because it's dedicated, I have guaranteed miles. I get a bunch of miles in a few days, and I'm getting paid more per mile. I make that consistent money while still being able to be home. So I'm actually able to make what they say I make a week. I'm actually able to make that every week because I drive every week, or almost every week. And in those weeks I drive, I make so much money that I can take time off and still be okay because I'm making that much while I'm driving.
Yeah, he enjoys a dedicated position a lot better because he's able to be home every week. Now, this dedicated position is more of what I would call a regional position, meaning you're staying within a specific region. Now, local is generally considered 100 to 150 mile radius around the home terminal. But regardless, this is why I say each person needs something different out of their career. Some guys are happy to spend months at a time out on the road and enjoy the freedom of the open road. Other guys would prefer to be home more regularly. And then there's some folks with families and children that want to be home every night. So you got to find what works for you. But let's see why he left KLLM if it wasn't for those things.
1, they don't give a, let me say this nicely. No, fuck that. They don't give a shit about you, period. You are nothing more than a number to them. And I say this because student companies got this. Student companies are not companies that you stay at for a long time. This is the best way I can explain it. If I told you I was 45 cents per mile when I started, every year you get a 1 cent bonus, not bonus, but 1 cent raise per mile for every year you stay with them. That means, and your max is 5 years. So that means after 5 years, five years of trucking, you are now at 50 cents per mile. I am at a company with only 6 months verified experience, and I'm making 70 cents per mile. With only 6 months experience, I'm 23. And there's people that's been driving for 5 years, 27, 28, 29 years old, only making 50 cents per mile.
The first company that you go with isn't going to be your forever company. This is because only certain companies hire inexperienced drivers, and they generally pay less, in my opinion, because drivers just don't know any better. But not only that, as an inexperienced driver, you're more prone to have accidents and mess ups, whether it's backing into another trailer at a truck stop or not knowing how to handle the snow in the winter. This leads to more insurance claims and more deductibles having to be paid out for the company. So slightly less pay for an inexperienced driver is to be expected. So when you get to 6 months to a year of experience, that's around the time where you need to start looking elsewhere. And it's not necessarily because these companies are bad companies, as we found a lot of them are pretty decent companies. But these companies are there to serve a purpose. They're there to train new drivers. So extract the value that they're offering, and when you need more value for your work that you're putting in, that you've earned and deserved from getting the experience, find another company to move on to. There's a ton of companies out there, and currently on my list to do deep dives on, I have over 52 companies yet to go. And this is just off of the big companies. There's even more smaller companies with 4 or 5 trucks, 25 to 50 trucks, or even up to 100 trucks that don't really hit a whole lot of people's radar. And once you get your experience, these are the companies that you really want to look at, because they're tight-knit, family-oriented, and you're no longer just a number, because they care about you as a driver, they pay you fair, and they make sure that your family time is important as well. So now for the question, okay or no way, would iTrucker219 go to work for KLLM? And the answer to that is no way. But if all that's important to you is making a big paycheck and not having driver-facing cameras, this company might be a good fit for you. And here's the main reasons why it's no way. Number one, even if I was a new driver looking to get the CDL, they have zero pay while you're going through CDL training. And this is an 18-day training program to get your CDL, and because they do 6-day weeks, this is about 3 weeks. So 3 weeks with no pay is going to be really hard to manage. This means that even though you don't have to pay for the CDL training, you will have to save up enough money to survive for 3 weeks. And for that 3 weeks of training, you have to serve a year contract. So in my opinion, the CDL training is not worth it. And if you don't go to their CDL training program and go to a truck driving school, they don't offer any tuition reimbursement either. And I think, like that gentleman said, I think 6 weeks with a trainer is way too much time with a trainer. Now, if they were to separate this out into maybe 3 2-week periods with different trainers so you can garner different experience from different drivers, that might be a good thing. But that's a long time to live side by side with somebody who you don't know. And there's only so much that they can teach you with their words. A lot of the things that you need to learn in trucking is experience based. And this is why the experience is so valuable. According to the recruiter, the home time policy is 7 days out for 2 days home. But I have a feeling that they left out that they require at least 3 weeks out at a time. So I think that was only a half truth, meaning that for 7 days out, you earn 2 days of home time, not for every 7 days out, you get to go home for 2 days after those 7 days. And this is just based off of the reviews. And finally, the last reason why I wouldn't go to work for them is I do not tolerate being disrespected. And when there's issues with having to chase down pay, as well as multiple reviews stating that there was disrespect coming from the dispatchers to the drivers, in my opinion, these are big red flags and reasons why I wouldn't want to go work for a company. But to their credit, I will say that their pay is amongst the highest of the companies that I've done a deep dive on so far. And being that their claimed average is 22 to 2,800 miles per week, you could stand to make some really good money working for KLLM. What you got to ask yourself is, at what cost? What are you willing to put up with in order to get that higher pay? I definitely don't think it should be a trade-off, respect for pay. However, it definitely seems like that's the case with KLLM. But I want to hear from you guys. Have you ever gone to work for KLLM? And let me know what your experience was down in the comments below. And if you want to see more company deep dives just like this one, click the playlist right here. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. All right, bye.